So, to begin, some of the topics that I wanted to discuss today is spirituality generally, how good and bad karma works, and the benefits of practicing yoga, meditation, and chanting, how this can apply to the younger generation. So to first start off with, I'd like to talk about questioning and losing faith. I think many young people watching this interview have grown up and they've had some sort of religious upbringing, whether it's hearing stories from the Ramayana, Mahabharata, participating in religious cultural activities, reading the Quran, going to the temple. They all have some understanding about our ancient scriptures. However, when we grow up, we start to face certain challenges that cause us to question or even lose our faith. For example, we experience love and breakups, family members have cancer, you work really hard in your career but you fail an exam or you can't find a job. Maybe it's not just one thing, but a series of these things that build up and you start to question your faith. And the more you try to pray, sometimes things seem to kind of fall off the ladder even more. So my first question is it okay when we are young to question our faith, tradition, ancient texts? Is it normal to lose faith? Have you ever experienced this? And how can we hold on to faith?
Right. So, two things, faith and questioning faith. You talked about the Mahabharata and the Ramayana and so on. Okay. On the other hand, you also said, somewhere you mentioned Quran. Mm-hmm. Now, in my case, the whole inquiry into this, if there was something deeper than what you read or hear, started with loss of faith. So I'm not afraid when young people say I've lost faith, because I think it's a good beginning, because what they mean by having lost faith is that they don't want to believe something simply because somebody has said it, or even if it is in your own scriptures. See, practically that's what it is. Even in the scriptures, it's what somebody has said. You don't know. So, this generation, which thinks more than the earlier generation, I think after every gap, new children who come, they are more intelligent than we were at that age, because of various factors. It could be genetic, it could be health issues, it could be the way life is now, and also, of course, internet, which is like, instead of the supreme being, as the Upanishads are all pervading, internet is all pervading.
Very true.
Google idam sarvam is a good way to say, instead of Ishavasya idam sarvam. So they ask questions. I think any discovery in material science as well as the higher sciences has come through questioning. So when somebody questions, not as if they have lost faith, it's that they're not sure, what is this? You say so, but how can we believe it? Mm-hmm. We don't know, we need to look. That, I think, is not negative, but is a positive aspect of life. So there's nothing to be, why we are worried is because we don't have the answers to give them, because we don't know ourselves. Mm-hmm. So the first step is to first find out for oneself. Then you can deal with these questions. It's when you can't deal with these questions that you get upset. I have seen people go to a spiritual teacher and ask some questions. When the answers that he or she knows, they're okay with that. But when they ask questions which they can't deal with, they get irritated, or they say, oh, this is a silly question, or move. You see, because they don't know what to say. So I think the first thing for a teacher should be to say, I don't know. Not I know everything. Unfortunately, in our ancient culture, it's not part of the culture, but as it is projected now, I'm talking about the Indian culture, there is some kind of a belief that a spiritually advanced person is omniscient. Nobody is omniscient. Nobody. You may know little more than others, but and in fact somebody may know more than you in some other matters. So nobody's wrong. So why can't we start saying, well, I don't know, this question you have asked, it has occurred to me for the first time. Can I look into this? So now to look into this involves first that I study the question. I'm not meaning anything specific. Generally, I understand the question. If I have already understood it, it becomes a little easier. But if I don't, I need to have time. I can't instantly say, okay, this is the answer, or shut up. You know what I mean? Yeah. So you need to understand. So the thing, unfortunately, people expect immediate answers. And those who want to be popular want to give immediate answers. They may not be the right answers. Why should we know everything? So I say we should look at this carefully. Say, give me time, I don't know. Now if you say you don't know, you lose faith. Others lose faith in you. That's okay. I don't know, so let me study it. Then, after the study, then there should be a dialogue. Without dialogue, you cannot come to an answer. Because if I say something, it's my understanding, my opinion, you don't know. So if you have a dialogue, then slowly you begin to understand what I'm trying to say. So I think loss of faith is not to be feared. It needs to be faced. And for facing it, you should know how to handle it. You should have some experience in this matter, and you should go with the idea that, well, I also need to learn. Suppose you know the answers, suppose, to most of the questions asked. Even then, the approach is not to give ready-made answers, because that has no meaning, but to get the person to think and find out for themselves. I think if the young people are given this idea, they would very much respond to it. Instead of trying to fill their heads with stuff and say, this is what you should believe. Why would they believe it?
Yes, I completely.
If you have time, I can go a little more into this.
Yes.
2 stories. No, with stories you learn more. But these are not stories, these are real stories. A young man goes to Thiruvananthapuram when Ramana Maharshi is around. Okay? And he has not eaten for 5 days. He's supposed to be a serious seeker. Not eaten for 5 days. And he has taken the vow of silence. He's a seeker, but he has already taken the vow of silence. How can he seek? Anyway, so he's taken the vow of silence. And he goes to Ramana Ashram and he stays there for 6 days. And at the end of it, Maharshi also hardly spoke. So he writes a note and sends it to Maharshi. I have been here for 6 days. I'm hungry. What kind of an ashram is this? Nobody asks me if you're hungry. He's in Mauna, okay? He doesn't open his mouth, this guy. Okay. How is somebody supposed to know? Just tell me. So anyway, nobody looks at a hungry man. And I see you sitting and feeding the monkeys and the squirrels. What about me? I'm hungry. And I'm a seeker, I've come here. Now, here is a genuine teacher. Maharshi responds, he breaks his silence and he responds. He said, I'm very sorry. How do I know that you're hungry? I'm not omniscient. And he says, I don't have cameras which can detect if somebody comes here. I don't know. And as far as the ashram is concerned, if you had opened your mouth and asked for food, you would have got food. How do they know that you're hungry? You don't know. So I don't know. What I'm trying to say is, Maharshi was so transparent that he said, I didn't know that you were hungry. Somebody else would have pretended, oh, I knew, but I was testing you. See the difference?
Yeah.
You get what I'm trying to say? Okay, that's one part of the story. The same thing which you asked happened many years ago when I came to the United States, probably my first visit, 98 or 99. I was taken to the Hindu temple, I think, because I was living in Fremont with somebody. In some place there was a Hindu temple where I was taken. Oh, no, sorry. This was in Phoenix. So I was staying with a Gujarati, with a Patel, who had a house which had, I think, 16 bedrooms or something. one of them was given to me, and it happened to be Ras Leela time. So the Gujaratis are very particular about this Ras Leela. So lots of youngsters had gathered, very nicely dressed, and with skirts that when they turned flew like a umbrella. And so the parents told me, some of them, that these youngsters, they come for Ras Leela and all that is fine, but they don't understand anything about our culture. Some holy men come from Gujarat and they don't touch their feet, they refuse to go to them, so can you talk to them? I said, listen, and I was like this, I was wearing a pair of jeans and a shirt. It was pretty warm weather. So I said, okay, I'll do that. Are they willing? I said, we will try. I said, okay. So I was led into a room. It's like a drawing room which they had made into like a conference, huge. And there were some chairs, and I was given, first they asked me if I wanted a throne. I said, sorry, give me a single chair. So I sat down, because they apparently had some thrones for the gurus. So I said, no, I'll sit in a chair. So I sat down, and there were all these chairs, and all these kids, boys and girls, teenagers a little more, came and sat down there. So I was given a microphone. So I said, okay, now I'm going to talk to these youngsters. So the parents are also there. I said, for 15-20 minutes, can you get out of here? I want to talk to them. You said talk to the youngsters. They're here, I'll talk to them. I don't want you. Can you please do that? The youngsters, 3 or 4 of them stood up and said, yes, please, go out. So they were out. So I spoke to them, and I found out that they were actually good children. There were 1 or 2 who were a little bit into drugs and all that, but most of them were quite okay. Their question was, we don't know who these guys are, and they come wearing weird garments, and they're sitting on thrones, and they're not kings. We live in a democracy. Why should we go and crawl before them and touch their feet? I said, but you're here listening to me. But he said, but sir, you're cool, you're like us. So we had a beautiful dialogue. I'm telling you, it went from half an hour. I think the parents were wondering what's going on, because they came and knocked. I said, now you can come in. Yeah. We had a lovely dialogue. I said, look, don't reject anything offhand. Look carefully. There may be some reasons why your parents are asking. If you don't like them, reject them, but don't reject them offhand without looking into it. Mm-hmm. Okay, so they're trying to touch a monk's feet. See, look at the tradition. Perhaps that was the fashion then. It needn't be imitated now. You don't need to. There are people who touch somebody's feet, and in their mind they're thinking, when is this guy disappearing? But you don't have to do that. It's hypocrisy. So be transparent. If you don't want to touch somebody's feet, that's absolutely fine. But don't pretend. So then they said that, can we again have another session tomorrow? They said, so I said, okay. So we had another session, and I explained to them about, they were so put off by this, they were kind of literally rejecting everything that is in tradition. I tried to make them understand that you can't throw everything off simply because it is tradition. It's a label, just as you say non-tradition is a label, tradition is a label. Something is tradition, you don't have to reject it simply because it is tradition. It's like throwing the baby out with the bath water. So I think this is the way to approach it, and I think there is a solution, because then young people like to think and find out for themselves. And if you know what you're saying, then you can provide the guidelines for this. But even if you know something, start with the understanding, start with the feeling that I really don't know, let's work it out together. Then it becomes their problem, not mine. And they find solutions. I think that is very important.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been going on talking now. You should say something.
No, I think that's,
Sorry.
I think that's That's great. But let's say, for example, young people, they don't have access to somebody like you. Maybe their parents are a little bit dogmatic. They're feeling frustrated. Maybe they are kids who do just throw anything out the window that has that label of being religious.
I've seen that, yes.
So
what do you do?
So what do we do? How do we move forward?
You have the internet, you have an interview.
That's why we're here.
So wait a minute. So now what I want to say is, you must be saying this to me, but I'm saying this to you. Maybe you think the same. While internet and Google have their limitations in these matters, they are also useful tools.
Yes, definitely. I agree.
Yeah, so therefore, the young people should be exposed to positive aspects of the internet. So they're not all the time spending time looking at just entertainment or things like that. And for that, they should understand that it is important to do that. Yeah. That the happiness which they are searching for, well, that's fine, it may be found somewhere, but it can also be found in different directions. That they can turn around and look within and perhaps find what they're looking for outside. Now, this idea has to be sent to them.
Yes.
I mean, broadcast to them.
Definitely. And I think if they're watching this or they somehow find this video or they've already taken that first step. And I think to kind of help them to continue on this path, I think a few of the questions in the interview, so it's almost like an online class where you can give them homework.
They can either come back to you or come back to me, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But then there is a link established and then it carries on.
Yes. I think that support system.
I think that's the point where you want to have this interview.
Yeah.
Good. It's a very wonderful thought.
Thank you.
Yeah.